Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band podcast. I am your host, Benedikt Hein. If you are new to the show, welcome. So stoked to have you. If you're making your own records, want them to sound better, you're in the right place. If you're already a listener, welcome back, of course. Today is a very special episode because we're celebrating episode 200 of this podcast. I can't believe it. It's pretty awesome. And we are not doing this on our own. I'm here with Malcolm as always, but we have a cool guest today, and that guest is Mario Radetzky from the band Blackout Problems. It's a German band that I've known for a while. We've met before in person, which is not always the case with podcast guests here on the show, but I've known Mario for a while. He's a really great dude. I can't wait to talk to him about this record. We're gonna talk about their upcoming album called Riot. We're going to talk about his role in producing or co-producing this. I have a ton of questions about the whole record-making process, the tools they used. So we're gonna nerd out about that. And yeah, I'm very, very happy to welcome you to the show, Mario. Thank you so much for taking the time. And of course, Malcolm, hello to you as well. Hope you're well, my buddy.
Yeah, hello, and yeah, thank you, Mario, for coming on. I didn't know this was our 200th episode.
Yes,
how amazing. That's sweet.
Thank you so much
Mario,
for having
welcome.
me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. So yeah, as I said, special episode 200, really cool. By the way, if you're not aware, this is both available on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast app. So wherever you're discovering us, you can either watch this or just listen to this. And yeah, so let's dive into this, man. So Mario, I have a ton of questions, as I said, about this upcoming record. So first of all, can you confirm that you co-produced this record, right? You were not only the vocalist of this band, but in this case, you've done way more than just singing. You actually had a say in the production, and it's kind of your baby in a way.
Yeah. I think it's kind of my baby. That's a good way to put it. And I think that I was always a bit involved into the production process, but never as much as with Riot. And when we started out, I think it's kind of a big thing to be a vocalist and a guitar player and then produce the record and you're also in the band. It's kind of weird sometimes, but yeah, for me, it was the perfect way to get into producing and recording a bit more, and to somehow give our band a new sound. I think was the goal. When I started out making this record, I had a few sessions booked with different producers and songwriters. And I was in Berlin, worked with a few people that you probably have heard of, and we wrote songs together and produced, and I showed them a few demos. And after a week, I was invited by the label to show them what I got. And just right a few seconds before I started playing the first demo, I came up with an idea, and I told them, you know what, take a pen and a paper. I'm going to show you a few songs now, and you choose your favorite if you want to, and we'll talk about that later. So I didn't tell them which song I did with which producer or songwriter. Mm-hmm. And after the session, they chose two songs, and I told them, both were made by me in our rehearsal space, in our jam space.
Wow, this is really cool.
That was kind of cool because that was the first step towards producing this record on my own. And when our mixing engineer, Moritz Enders, who you probably know, he actually encouraged me. He said, you know what, I think you should do this on your own and just try it, man. And Moritz is such a good mixing engineer, and having him on the record was like very, very important to me and to us as a band, of course. So when he said you should try it on your own, I was like, okay, man, if you say so, then I should give it a go, man.
Really cool.
Because I think that he's so good at what he does, that in this case, when he told me like you should try it, I thought if he's convinced that I can do it, then I should probably try to be convinced myself that convince myself that I can do it.
Yeah. Just
having people you can trust like that is so invaluable. Like building a team of people where when they say something, you can just feel like good going with their decision. I love that. We almost had Moritz on the podcast when we were in Germany. But it didn't come together, unfortunately. There was a conflict or something. But too bad. I wish we got to chat with him.
He was supposed to be on the studio sofa when we were in Hamburg, but he couldn't make it, unfortunately. And hopefully that will happen at some point. But so the way I get this, Mario, is you didn't just co-produce it; you actually produced it. Is that right? I thought it was some kind of collaboration with a different producer. And just for before you answer, sorry, just for context for people, because not everybody might be aware of your band or might know who that band is. We're not talking about like the first record that a band makes, the first kind of demo or DIY approach. Like this is an established band that we're talking about. You've already had records out on labels. You've worked with other producers before. So producing this, that's also be like a major record, is... it's quite the task to do something like that and to pull it off properly. It's not like there's a little bit, there's something on the line here, and it's like it's quite different from the typical, hobbyist doing it for the first time, just playing around with it. Like this is a serious record that you're producing there. So was it all you then?
Yeah, I did it together with my friend Karan. Karan Valia. He's living in Hamburg and he's working in a studio there, and he's been working with us for quite some time. He actually produced, he engineered our records since Chaos. So we had Chaos in 2018 and we had Dark in 2021. He engineered those records, and I knew that I had to get a team. When I knew that if I'm the head of it and I'm the producer, I need a good team behind me. So first of all, the mixing engineer, Moritz, he was the first one on the team. And then Karan as an engineer, he was also on the team, and he gave me the opportunity to like have someone to ask him about stuff. And I don't know everything. I just know, I know our band pretty well, and I really know how I want our band to sound, but I don't know how to get there sometimes. So I needed these people to help me guide the way, or to help me get there but I'm the one giving them the ideas, and they can help me achieve certain things. So this record obviously needed some great help, and Karan was one of the let's say main figures helping me. He's such a talented dude. I can't even tell you. He's amazing, and he's got a very good ear, and he's got a very good style, and I don't know. He can be quite fast with things. So it's sometimes it's hard for me to keep up with him, but he's such a talented dude, especially on vocals and drums. Most of the guitars and bass and stuff was done by me, but he helped me. He's always the guy that he's my go-to guy if it comes to recording vocals. So he's a native speaker, and he helps me with my accent.
Native
sometimes.
English speaker, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a native English speaker, and I'm obviously not, as you can tell by now.
You're doing great.
Thank you so much. He's helping me. It's actually kind of a fun story. We once worked together with a guy and sent him some demos back in 2016, I think. And on these demos, I didn't really care for my accent or anything. I just sang, and that's it. And he sent them back saying something like, "You sound more German than the singer of No Twist." And I was like, what? First of all, No Twist is such an amazing band. And then I thought, okay, they have an accent. I have to check that. And I was trying to find someone who can help me with that and guide me a little. So I tried like 2 or 3 different persons, but Karan was the best way to go. And he's done an excellent job. And his mom also is an English teacher. So
cool.
It's great if you have any questions
really
on lyrics. So
Great.
If we're not
I want
sure,
to quickly touch on that, because that's like actually I think that's a big takeaway for our audience of self-recording musicians that maybe haven't ever considered that. Yeah, if you were, I would bet the majority of our North American audience has never considered trying to change their accent to sing on a song they're recording. And then possibly some of our, European audience and other audiences in other places have also never thought of it like you hadn't until you got that note. But that does happen all the time. And even in North America, for North American audiences, I had a great vocal session with another producer producing. I was engineering, and a great artist. And the producer was just trying to make them sound more American so that it was more, could sell the album down south of Canada. And it was like, oh yeah, this is a high level, this matters. So know your audience, I guess, and at least know what your goal is for how you want it to sound in the end. And I'm curious, Mario, why did you want it to sound less German?
Yeah, I think that the German accent might not be the most sexy accent in the world, and I just wanted to get that right a little. And Karan really, I don't know, he like looked very, very closely at me, and he helped me guide me through singing some of the lyrics in a different way. Especially he looked at me and looked at my mouth, like what am I doing here? What's if I say this, if I, for example, sing the word me, do I say me, or how do I pronounce it, and how do I act with my mouth? And he really diagnosed. He really looked at me very, very closely, and that changed a lot. And I think it's something that you might consider if you're from Europe, for example, and you try to sing in English and you haven't done that all your life. Then try to get a native English speaking person to record your vocals. It might help you, it might not, I don't know. It's different for everyone, but for me it was quite important, and it helped me since our second record, Chaos. Yeah, he's helping me with that.
Cool. Yeah, so I think there's another great takeaway here, and this is the whole topic of building a team. So when people think of self-producing records, they immediately think the term producer often for many people means producer, engineer, mixer, and all of these things, when in reality it's like different roles. Some people do it all themselves, but it's very often a smart decision to be like, okay, I can do this very well, but I definitely need help here, and I need to build a team to make the record the best it can be. And so you actually went out and got Moritz on board as a mixer. Then you got help on the engineering side. You engineered some of it yourself, I assume, and then you are obviously the creative producer. But that whole thought process, of building a team, which kind of people do I need? What can we do ourselves? I think that's a really, really cool thing for our audience to know, because I just know that in some situations you just gotta DIY it, or people just want to, but oftentimes DIYing everything is not going to lead to the best result. So can you maybe touch on that again real quick? Just, have you had some experiences in the past that made it clear that, for example, mixing would not be something you want to do, or what was like or was it clear for you immediately that you needed to build a team of people to get it done?
Yeah, I think you touched on so many things. Yeah. First of all, I have to say that you don't have to do everything yourself. We, as a band, we started out being a DIY band, and we did everything ourselves. We even copied our own demo CDs and stuff and handed them out at shows and stuff like that. We did everything ourselves. But as soon as you start building a team, it's really great to have people to work with and to get their take on stuff. And it's the same with producing. When I started producing this record, I thought that I had to do everything myself. But if it came to recording vocals, for example, I knew that Karan was the go-to person. If it comes to mixing, I know that Moritz is the go-to person, and he's way better than I could ever be on mixing. So when it came to synth and programming stuff, I knew that there was another person that I wanted to have on the team. It was Geister. He's an electronic producer. They are sorry, English pronouns. That's not my thing. Are an electronic producer, and he Sebastian really really helped me on that, and I knew that I can try stuff and I can get it to a certain point, but if I wanted to get it further, then a team or another person is the best way to get your own thing further. You know, it's something that you have to consider. You don't have to do everything yourself. And I had another person on the team if it came to backing vocals. All backing vocals, or a lot of backing vocals, were made by Leonie Klinger. She's a singer of the band Block. And yeah, I love her. I love the way she harmonizes vocals and stuff. So I got her into the studio and we just tried to do certain things. And then we actually worked on a song a bit more. The song's called DNA, and it's the first one on the record. And she's doing the chorus. So we also had a feature on that song as well with her.
Cool.
And yeah, that was kind of special. But you had another question you touched on.
No, that was basically like it was the whole collaboration aspect, really. And yeah, the part of the question was the second part of the question was if there was any like specific experience in the past where you tried something and clearly failed at doing that, or maybe that was also part of it. I don't know. Sometimes we have to do something before to realize that we are not the best person to do it, right? So
yeah. So right before or during the process of writing this record, I was producing a record by Block, and I really did everything myself. I did the recording, the engineering, the producing, and I also mixed the record. I just had another person mastering it, and that was great. It was great to do everything myself and to try out different things. But I kind of knew that if it comes to Blackout Problems, I need some help, and I need because I was also in the band.
The outside perspective.
Yeah, and I really needed that, and it helped me a lot. And it's not something that sometimes I maybe thought it's a weak thing to have, like to ask another producer for help or something. That's not the case. It's just not the case. It's just an ego thing. You have to let that go.
Yeah, and so many great records, like major records, are made that way. Like even the best of the best in this game, like they still collaborate and get help. And many great producers and mixers will tell you that they can't either mix the record themselves or master the record themselves because they're too close to it or whatever. So this happens to like on all levels, and it's totally normal. But yeah, it's a learning process for sure. I had no idea that you produced the Block record because they were actually playing a show in my hometown a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so they are great, but I had no idea you made the record for them. So this is great.
Yeah, it's totally different sound, and yeah, it's something completely different. But I love that about music. I love how diverse things can get.
Yeah, that's a great segue actually into what I think could be a main part of this conversation, or I want it at least to be, because I have to learn a lot there as well. And this is the whole blend of rock or like heavy music that is part of Blackout Problems with the electronic and pop side of things that is also part of Blackout Problems. And so this Block record is more pop than anything, I'd say. And Blackout Problems is still a rock band and a pretty heavy one, but you kind of blend all these things together. And I'm obviously familiar with that, and I do that a lot too when I work with bands because just many bands do it. But you take it further than most bands, and also you are using tools that I'm in the process of learning still, and I want to know more about them because you're working in Ableton, which is not really what I work in with. Like I have it, and I sometimes do stuff in it, but usually I do all my entire, even the whole MIDI stuff. I do all that in Cubase. But I just love the Ableton MIDI workflow, and I would love to learn more about it. And you are a rock producer who uses Ableton and incorporates those great features. And I'd love to learn more about all of that, basically. So let's start by, like, where does this blend, like, how did that happen? Because I think, I might be wrong, but I think you transitioned more and more into that electronic side of things, right? Because Blackout Problems in the beginning was more pure rock than it is now, if you want to, like, for lack of a better term. Or like heavy music or punk rock or whatever you want to call it. But I think now I'm hearing more of these electronic elements than before.
Yeah, totally. I think first of all, we started out being just a normal band. And what I mean by that is we got together in our rehearsal space and we just jammed. We jammed a lot and we just played and tried out different things before even trying to record anything. We just jammed and played and made music and wrote songs. And then we, the first record that we did was Holy. We just rehearsed and then went to the studio and recorded the whole thing in 3 days, and that was it. Just we were 3-piece back then, drums, guitar, bass. We played all the tracks live, and then we did a few overdubs with the guitar. That's where we got our second guitar player Mo in the band, and to produce to get that sound that we recorded live on stage, because we just considered ourselves as a live band and we wanted to do everything live and raw. And our idols were bands like, for example, Heiß Kalt is one of the bands that we thought the way they do it, that's the way to go. They can do everything live and they produce that on the record. And the older we got and the more we experimented with things, it kind of built up to that point where we're now, and we're still trying to find out what Blackout Problems really is and what we can do. But when I started writing this record or starting to produce this record, I asked myself a lot, why do we sound like we sound like, or what do we want to incorporate in our sound, and what do we want to sound like really? And it was the first time that I really got to look back on the records we did, and with like a positive mindset. I always wanted, after recording a record, I always wanted to break with that, and I wanted to do something completely different. Mm-hmm. And this time I could look back on our legacy, so to say, and see what did we sound like when we started out, and what's the next step for us? What's the next step, and what do we want to do now? And I kind of think that the whole rock and pop and electronic side of things, they blend together now, because that's all things that we listen to, and that's all things that we love. And it kind of built up because someone bought a synthesizer and brought it to the rehearsal space and tried out what can we do with that. And then we started not only playing with a normal bass, but also with a bass station, and do synth bass sounds live on stage. And then the next step was I got an MPC and I had some samples that I used live on stage, and we played around with that. And that's always, it's like a mm-hmm. thing that kept building up and building up. It's not something that we were never a band that had a big master plan or something like that. We just did and did stuff. And
do you think that was part of the success? Part of the reason for why the band got successful also? That whole evolution and that incorporating of different elements, because at some point you reached a point where your albums these albums were in the charts, and you played pretty big festivals, and the band had really some success and continues to do so. And do you think that helped with that, versus like staying the normal band without experimenting with all these things? Is that like does it lead to a broader appeal, or does it make you more unique, or do you what's your take on this?
That's a good question. I think it makes us a bit more unique, I think, but it never really helped us on the short term, because, for example, Holy, our first record, was really punk rock based, and I think so. The next record was called Chaos, and the first single that we dropped broke with everything we did before. It was so different from all the stuff that we did before that a lot of our listeners were like, "What the fuck? Yeah. What are you doing now?" Yeah. And the same thing with our last record, Dark. The first single that we put out was called Murderer, and it's different from everything we've done before. So everyone was like, "What? What's that?" And I think we've always lost a few listeners.
Of course, yeah.
To our new records, but we gained some new ones, and the family or the fan base that's around Blackout Problems is as unique as the band. It's a family thing, I think, and we're not a hype band. We've never been really successful with this one song, and everything has to sound like this one song. We've never had a hit single or something like that, and I think that's a positive thing, because we kind of we played ourselves to a space where we have a safe space for our music, and we can do whatever we like. And even the label doesn't really give us advice on how they want us to sound like, because they know that we're so stubborn and we're so we're kind of ourselves.
Yeah,
that's the thing, and maybe that helps us. But on the other hand, I think that there are a lot of decisions that we made that were purely artistic decisions that didn't really help us to get more successful, because we probably, if we were one of these bands who had a master plan and did everything like perfectly planned out and stuff like that, we probably would be way more successful. But that's not who we are, and that's not what we want. We want to do great records, and that's always the biggest goal for me, was always to play as many shows as it takes to get to the next level, and to be able to afford a studio.
Yeah.
Because when we recorded our first record, Holy, we just had money for 3 days in the studio. So we had to do everything in 3 days.
The entire record?
Yeah, and except for vocals. Yeah. Vocals, we didn't rehearsal space. But
that record did quite well, though, right?
Yeah, and it was like, it was so much fun. It doesn't have to be something bad to have 3 days in the studio, you know. It's just what we had.
It's intense
back then. Yeah, it's just intense.
Very intense. Yeah.
I've got a question for you, because you slowly introduced electronic elements through various different synths and stuff like that. And then did you have to figure out, like, it sounds like you did that live first and then put it onto the album. Is that correct?
That's not really the case. We also experimented in our rehearsal space, and of course in the studio before we went on stage. But we do quite a lot on stage as well. That's it's kind of both ways, I'd say.
Right. Well, with Ableton as your DAW, you have this big advantage of that. You're able to use Ableton with your live show. I would assume that's what you're using for lights and tracks and
no
anything like that. Is that correct?
No, that's not. That's not correct.
Sorry,
no.
that comes from, like, that's misinformation that I probably gave to Malcolm, just because I saw you when we first met. I think it was Rock the Hill, the festival in. Yeah, that's where we met personally, I think, the first time, the two of us. Yeah. And I saw your live show there, and I was very impressed by the whole production, like how well everything was like synced, and like the entire team, you know, like from like everyone behind the desk, on stage, everything, like the lights, sound, everything, the backing tracks, everything was so spot on. And I assumed you were running Ableton to accomplish that, but I might have been completely wrong. I was just impressed by what it looked like, and I talked to your engineers, or like people in your team that you had with you, and they told me about like how everyone was like, you know, listening to the same thing, and everything was like synced up. So I just assumed it was Ableton, but I'm obviously wrong.
No. But that's a really nice thing to say, and I'm gonna pass that on to our crew.
That was super impressive,
especially our sound guy. He's called Crispin, and he's been with us since the start, I think. Yeah, he's the first crew member that we have, and he's amazing, and we wouldn't be the band we are without him. That's for sure. So shout out to Crispin. And but the thing is that we don't have, at the moment, we don't have a computer on stage, and we didn't had a computer back then at Rock the Hill. It was more or less loop based back then.
Oh, cool.
So we had a few loops on the SPDSX.
Ah, okay.
But we didn't incorporate Ableton into our live set because we didn't have the money to do so.
All right. Yeah, you got to build a rig, I guess.
Very interesting because it seems to be the perfect tool for that, right? And so it seems to me it probably more difficult to do it loop-based and to make sure that everything is really synced up well and works that way.
Yeah, now the thing is that we have a few backing tracks now on the SPDX. We just got the new one.
Can you tell our audience, please, what that is, just for the people who don't know what that is?
Yeah, it's a drum pad. It's a drum pad where you can put samples on, and you can also put backing tracks on. And you have on the old one, I think you have like 3 outputs, and you can route a click track to the 3rd output, and you can have the 2 main outputs to like run stereo backing tracks. The new one has 6 outputs now, or 7, I think. I'm not quite sure, so don't judge me. But we wanted to have an Ableton set, but the thing was that first of all, it's kind of expensive compared to an SPDX, and if we would have incorporated an Ableton set, we would have loved to like use more channels. But the thing is that our sound guy, he does our monitor sound from the front of stage, front of house.
Even on the bigger festivals where there's monitor mixers, you still do it from front of house?
Always.
That's interesting too. Okay, great.
Yeah, always. And that's for us. The problem with that is that he doesn't have any more channels on his desk. So we're using all the channels we have, and we're not able to add more instruments or add more channels, for example, to use more Ableton stuff. And if we only have 2 channels left, then why should we like get an Ableton set? So
no, that makes sense. I did the exact same thing with my band of Rascals. We used an SPD drum pad to do exactly that. Click on one channel, a stereo out to the desk with our backing tracks, and it was actually a great setup. I mean, it's more work for the drummer, probably whoever's running it, to make sure they click the right pad and have that all going. But once you've got it set up, it works quite well, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
And I gotta say,
I mean,
sorry, I gotta say, it was like I'm pretty surprised by hearing all of that, just because that festival show was really impressive. It was like a fully professional production that seemed to be, or probably was, very well thought out, and you were not playing the head. Like I think there was one band after you, or something. Millencolin. Yeah, Millencolin was after you. Like Millencolin are one of the biggest punk bands on this planet, I think, and like a very well known big band, but like they didn't have a chance. Like your show, it was really. I wouldn't have wanted to be in their shoes actually playing after you, because it's like the show was over basically. Like just the professionalism, the impact, everything. I know it's like always personal, subjective, and all of that. And I'm not talking about the music or the band themselves, but like just the professionalism and how well you pulled that off. That was crazy good, and I'm very surprised to hear that you did it that way, because that also included the lights and everything, and just how you ran that whole show. So,
thank you so much. It's so nice to hear that, because we don't look at ourselves as professionals at all. Yeah, we're always we have like a very healthy respect for stages and I think, and we kind of I don't know, none of us really properly learn how to do what we do. We just kind of started driving out and playing all the shows that we can get, and we played everywhere. We played on like we probably played your backyard at one point, and just did it to get better. And that's it's always nice to hear something like that,
Yeah, cool. So are you planning to incorporate Ableton in the future then? Like probably Crispin has to answer that, right? If he doesn't get a bigger desk, there's no way.
We're thinking about getting a monitor pult now. Monitor desk now. No, sorry. We're thinking about that, but I always liked the live aspect of a live show, and
including triggering the samples yourself with the pad and stuff.
Yeah. I know that you can do everything with Ableton nowadays, and you can. Ableton also has like this solution to Ableton can also get the tempo that you're playing and then
match that and
match that. Yeah, but at the moment I think it's a good thing that we're still a live band and we're still doing live things, and we've just a few years ago we changed our normal amps to Kemper amps, which was a big step, and now maybe the Ableton set, maybe it comes next year, who knows. I don't know.
So one quick question because I know some people are asking the question themselves, and I had that question in mind as well when I first heard about these things. What happens if you trigger a backing track, a loop that's going on for a while, and then throughout this thing playing, somebody, the click, somebody doesn't hear the click anymore or loses it in any way, or you kind of, everything falls apart. Like, has that ever happened? And if that happens, what do you do? Like, because the backing track keeps going, so if a band member or the entire band kind of loses the tempo or the click, then it can be pretty chaotic that way, right? So I don't know if that's ever been the case, but I've talked to many people who are afraid of using backing tracks because they fear that if somebody makes a mistake, everything goes sideways, basically.
Yeah, of course we did a lot of mistakes, but I always see the drummer who starts the whole SPDSX stuff as the center of the stage, and if he sometimes gets the click through, he splits the click, so he gets the click directly from the SPDSX, and that's the safest way, first of all. And then if you mess up or play a different part or anything, you have to get back into it. And I always see the drummer as the center, and he's gonna tell us if we're off, and he's gonna be the metronome if the click is not there anymore. But just in case, normally on the SPDSX, those pads, you have to imagine it like this. On the one pad, there's the click sound, and on the other pad, there's the backing track. And these pads are linked to each other. So in case the backing track stops, probably the click will stop as well. So you can start the song you can start the song all over again. It rarely happens that the click stops and the backing track still runs. And
okay.
And then you can do arrangements where you don't need the backing track. I've heard of bands canceling the show because their backing track didn't work. I mean, that doesn't have to happen if you can do an arrangement that allows the backing track to fuck up. That's probably a good thing. But of course, we trigger a lot of drum sounds with the pad as well. So, for example, if you take the track Murderer, the first beat is always on the pads. So if that doesn't work, then we're fucked as well. So the drummer has to jam something, or you have to make up something. You have to find a solution. That's the beauty of playing live.
Yeah,
and that's sometimes the dark side of playing live as well. But I tend to look at it as beauty.
Yeah, totally. I was just looking up your Spotify real quick because I wanted to check something. Just something you touched on before. You said you never had a hit single, but you have this very loyal family-like audience and stuff. And I found actually something that never stood out to me, but it's actually pretty remarkable. I just found that you're right. You don't have you have some songs that have millions of streams, which is awesome, of course, and you have 150,000 monthly listeners, about something like that. But what stands out to me is the overall amount of streams and how evenly it's distributed across your songs, because not many bands have that. A lot of bands have this one or two songs that get streamed a lot and everything else just kind of nobody listens to. But if I look at your albums there, it's the last one is a little more, some songs are a little more popular than others, but across the board, you got hundreds of thousands of streams or tens of thousands of streams on the older record for every single song. And it's pretty evenly distributed, which is awesome because it means people listen to the record as a whole or to every single song of those records. So do you think this, like, what do you think has that to do with? It's just, I know it's totally unrelated to what we've just been talking about, but I've just looked it up, and I just wanted to point it out because it's really not that often the case that if you look at Chaos, for example, the 2018 record, every single song is like 6 figures in streams, and like there's many songs around like 300, 500, 700, 260. So what do you think is the reason for that?
I think the reason for that is that we are an album band. We don't do single after single after single. We write records, and we take quite long to do so. For example, our last record came out in 2021. The next one's coming out next year in 2024. So it took us 2.5 years to write that, and we always have like a concept to a record.
That's what I was thinking.
There's a sound concept, or there's a lyrical concept, or there's themes and topics, and we always try to write records that you can listen to from the first to the last song in one. Give it a go. Like, it's not that we're not this band that has this one song that's big, or we're not a band that drops a single every other month or something. We kind of take our time, and then we lock ourselves into the rehearsal space and come back with a whole record and a whole
piece of art, basically, like this.
Piece of art or concept or anything. Yeah, cool. And that's maybe a reason for that. And of course, you have a record then, and some of our listeners have favorites on this record. But if we post like, what's your favorite song of the record, we tend to read all the songs. Everyone chooses a different favorite.
Interesting.
And when we for this new record, Riot, we had a session with our label and our management, and we told them to like give us ideas. What are the singles for the record? What do you think? And what do we think? Everyone had a pen and a paper and had to write down different singles, and every song was named except for 2 songs that were definitely no singles, but they named every song, and that's remarkable, I think.
Yeah, let's go through that record real quick, or like not so quick, depending on how we're gonna do this. I got a lot of technical and like specific questions about some things that I've heard, and also the text that I got, the kind of promo description text from the label, because it's always interesting to me to get these kind of descriptions. And I tried, and I did it the same way this time. I always tried to listen first before reading everything, because I want to hear it unbiased, and then I try to compare what I think about the songs with what they sent over. And sometimes there's a great overlap, and sometimes it's the exact opposite of how I felt when I listened to it. And I've marked some parts of that text, and also have made my own notes. And Malcolm, maybe we can talk about some more Ableton specific things then as well, because there's a lot of production techniques and stuff that I heard that I have questions about. So all right, so I want to start by the first thing that I felt it the exact same way that they described it, which was the entire record is an interesting mix of, I'm just going to use their words because they described it really well here in this text, like the certain sadness which is overplayed by infectious rhythms and invites you to dance. And this bipolarity, this thing between like the melancholy and the sadness in the songs, but then also the groove and the kind of almost, feel good vibes sometimes that come with that, and in combination with the sadness, is what really stuck out. And I think you captured that very well sonically. So my first question would be, how do you manage to get that across in the production? Like, how do you make a song feel sad or the opposite of it, or do both at the same time to achieve a certain feeling? Is that all like songwriting and it has nothing to do with the production, or are there certain production things that you used to create this kind of vibe? Because I think it goes through the record in a way. It's like a part of the theme of the record almost.
That's a good question. Yeah. First of all, I have to say that I probably have to explain my whole songwriting and production process a little, so you can probably get into what I did there. I I did a template on Ableton where I had tracks for drums, for bass, for guitars, for synth, and for vocals, and I just started writing songs. And as soon as one of the songs like stood out to me, or I wanted to work more with the song, I always went back to this project. So there are projects that I started in, I don't know, June 2021 that had tracks in them that went on the record, and I never changed the project. I always worked with the same project. So the whole songwriting and production process kind of mixed up, was kind of mixed up. And
so do you mean that you are writing the song in this Ableton session, and then that is what goes on to become the session file for the recording process as well, that same Ableton session? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Very interesting, because this is pretty much the opposite of what I teach, for example, in our coaching program. Not because I think it's wrong, but because I think for people getting into this, it really helps to like have different, perspectives in different parts of the process. And many people, if they mix it all up, they get confused and they build these like very complicated, cluttered sessions and eventually want to start over again anyways. So it's very interesting that it worked for you, but it's kind of the opposite of what I usually recommend doing. So yeah. But again, it's interesting. And you're not the first person to tell me this, but it's like interesting to hear that. Because I assume these sessions will get pretty big with like lots of takes that don't make it on the record, and like they can get cluttered and chaotic, and you kind of somehow navigated it for like 2 years until the record got done, right?
Yeah, and I would totally agree with you that it's not the best thing to do, but for me, the approach was to make the record very personal. And when we did our last record, we did demo sessions and songwriting sessions with our producer back then. Our producer was called Geister, the same one that did
synth stuff,
the electronic side of stuff here. And Geister always wanted us to keep the demos or to keep the demo tracks, and we always were thinking like, no, we gotta go to the studio. We have to record in a good room. We have to record good big drums. We have to get better guitar amps and stuff like that. So we did that with our last record, and the recording process was very long and very exhausting. And at the end of it was sometimes the record got better and better and better, but sometimes it kind of lost the vibe from the first songwriting sessions, and that's what I wanted to keep. I wanted to keep this vibe.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
If you take a song that is called Gloves, it's already out now. It's the song with the feature by Rao Reynolds of Enter Shikari. I recorded a guitar in the intro section that was only recorded as a DI track. I took the guitar and plugged it into my interface. I didn't know the DI tracks, no preamps, nothing, just the DI track, and that's what I recorded. And I didn't even put an amp simulation on that. I just added a few. I think I just added 2 plugins by Soundtoys, the little plate and the tremolator, and that's it. And it was so special. The sound was so special that when I tried to re-record it, I never matched it. And I knew that I wanted to keep that sound. And I also did a mistake on that, on playing this guitar riff. There's one note in that really doesn't belong into the chord progression. But I don't know, the vibe was great. So I really wanted to keep that. And that's what makes records personal and special. It's these little things that happen along the way that, if you record anything with your phone and then put it into the track, and that's what makes a record special. And big drums and big this and big that's also part of it, and that's good if you have that. But I wanted to try a different approach, and I really wanted to keep our personality in the songs, because if you break it down, personality is, or let's say, style or sounds, it's so important to have something that you can really connect to, and perfectly arranged songs and perfectly tuned vocals and perfectly sampled drums and stuff. That's also cool if you want that, but I really wanted to create something that's different.
But still, I totally agree with everything you said there, and there's never a right or wrong way to make music anyways, but I still want to encourage people to listen to the record when it's out, or that single that's already out, and also the previous ones, because it's not like people might hear this and be like, oh, cool, then I don't have to, I can make all the mistakes I want. I don't have to tune my vocals. I don't have to make sure everything's played well, because like the mistakes are what make it great. I know for a fact that some people always take it like that when someone says something like that. So if you listen to that record, though, you'll still hear a very well-produced record that doesn't have a lot of like distracting, obvious mistakes on it. It's like it's still tracked very well, played very well. There's certainly some editing being done and stuff. It's still... it has a vibe. It's certainly not mathematically perfect, but it's still well made, well produced, well engineered, and all of that. So I'm just saying this because before people come back to me and be like, yeah, you got it. You're wrong with your perfectionism. Like they do it all like that. No. It's like that's still part of it. It's finding the right balance, and it's the art is to like keep that vibe, like you said, and that magic and the imperfections that make it great, but not to the degree that they are distracting or hurting the song. That's what you want to do, that balance you want to find there, basically.
If you could paint a picture like that, you have like this. Take the best drums you have, take the best bass and the best guitar that you have, and then just add this crappy. Melody that's recorded with your phone, and then put that in, and
then it shines even more.
That's the personality that you put in, and if you lose that, then you sometimes lose the magic of the song. And I was really looking for magic here, and I was trying to keep that in our record. That was really important to me.
Great. So the first song, according to this info that I have, that you made kind of a test of how it works when you self-produce a record, was Stash, right? This was like sort of the guinea pig of this whole thing, like the first experiment. What made that a good first song to try the whole self-producing thing? Like, what did you do there, and what were the learnings that then made it also to the other songs?
It was a finished song.
It was already done, basically.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. We kind of felt that this one's finished, and the other ones were not even written at this moment. So we went into a studio called Circle Studio. It's in Berlin, and it's a very small. It's not a very small, but it's a very cool studio. But it doesn't really get used by a lot of rock bands, and we went in with our drums, and we were like one of the first bands that recorded a whole set there. And usually they're just like songwriting or producing sessions of rap artists or pop artists who use, like, they have this big desk, but most of the producers that come in just use an Apollo X4 and that's it. They don't use all the channels here. So we were one of the first bands that used every channel and every preamp in the studio. And we started recording there, and the room was not well prepared for drums, for recording drums. It was way too small, and at one point we opened the doors and put a stereo mic into the hallway to record to get some
ambience,
to get some echo chambers or something like that. But we thought, that's a studio that we have available at the moment, so let's take it and just ride with it. And so Stash was the first song that we recorded, and it was the first one where I had to make some decisions as a producer, and was like, okay, let's try to record a chorus where you only play the ride You're not going on the crash. You only play the ride. For example, that was like one of the first decisions that I remember that where I was standing there in the control room and was like, okay, we do it this way. And I kind of felt how heavy it is to
pressure.
To tell to tell everyone that's how we're gonna do it. And I was never trained to do that, so it was kind of intimidating for me to tell Karan and Marius, who played the drums, to tell them what they had to do. But it worked out at the end, and I think everyone like was very content with it, and it was great.
So again, that's an interesting piece of information right there. You not only self-produced and built a team, but you also rented out or went to different studios. So you didn't do all of it in your own jam space that you're in right now, right? Or your own home recording studio, basically.
No, we a lot of the record was recorded at Circle Studios in Berlin. It's a studio that is practically on the ground floor of our label, of our label's building, and it's a free to use studio for all the artists that are signed there, and that was basically for us like that's perfect for us. Let's go there. Let's just have 3 or 4 days every other month and just record some stuff there. And they have good gear there as well, so way better than the stuff we have in our rehearsal space. So we thought, why not give it a go? And it kind of helped us because the record wasn't finished when we started recording. We were still in the process of writing songs back then. So
again, another thing that I will have to explain to people.
I'm so sorry.
I love that. I love that cool. Because it's so cool that that all those records are made in like very different ways, and this is just. This is actually helping my message and just showing that there's no right or wrong. It's my preferred way of doing things and what I recommend to new artists, but it doesn't mean you can make it you can make a different record, right? So perfect.
I would recommend that as well. I would even recommend it to myself now. Now having experienced what I have experienced. So first of all, usually we wrote a record and then we rehearsed it for like 4 weeks or 6 weeks straight. So we try to meet like every other day and just play the record and then record the record, and that's it. But now that we kind of went on a different route, we thought, okay, let's do something. Let's do it differently. And there was so much work to be done, and I was so overwhelmed by the whole process and the whole the challenge to do all that. That it kind of helped me to get into the studio, record something, see how it works, and then go back, write another song, and go back to the studio, record something. But it's just because the studio was available. If the studio hadn't been available, we would have probably booked the session at a Toolhouse studio because it has a great room for drums, and then go there in I think it's in what's the city called where Toolhouse is? I don't know. But it's a small city, and the studio's great. The studio owner's great, and Moritz Enders, our mixing engineer, has worked there quite a lot. So he's great, and the studio's great. But the city is not that great. You don't want to go there and like record there every other month.
It's Rothenburg an der Fulda.
Yeah, it's a different thing with
city.
Berlin. You know, you go there and you have a great time in Berlin, and you kind of meet some people, and some people come to the studio, and you exchange ideas, and it's a great vibe. But if you go to the Toolhouse studio, your record has to be finished. You go there, you record everything, go back home, and of course, this way it's if you have a studio available for free, you can like. If you can rent it for free, then you can use it and try out stuff and experiment and go back and erase certain things. And, you know, we recorded some drums and then just threw them away and just used loops, for example, which we probably wouldn't have done if we had to rent out a studio that hadn't been that cheap and we had recorded it all. Then we probably would have stick to that.
Yeah.
So.
Which is great news because you DIY producers out there, you have that luxury if you're producing in your own jam space, right? Like that's one of the advantages of not going to not booking a studio where you have a certain limited amount of time and a certain limited, budget and everything, and it has to be done. There's of course pros and cons to both, but that's one of the cool things about self-producing is if you have your jam space already, you can do exactly that. You can try something, and if it doesn't work, throw it away and do something else without it costing you a fortune. So this is actually great news and good to hear that you say that.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, we're not like the band that has like a lot of money at their hands and can do everything they want. That's not the case. This record is DIY as fuck.
Yeah.
I was really basically Googling stuff and watching YouTube tutorials
and listening to
while doing that and listening to this podcast while recording this record. So it's DIY as fuck. It's really basic. And we just used every opportunity that we had. But besides recording at the Circle Studios, we also recorded in our rehearsal space, and we also recorded on tour. I've been last year. I've played like a few shows with a different band, and I was only playing guitar, so I didn't have that big. I have the luxury of having some spare and free time during the day, so I just started bringing my gear and recording on. In hotel rooms or just in the backstage or stuff like that. So they were joking about that when the record was finished. They was like, yeah, man, you can have like experience a tour. The record's finished, because I was always on tour and just recording and working on the record or editing stuff in the backstage. And actually the last guitars that I recorded I think in Chemnitz in a hotel room, and sent the record off into the mixing process from tour. So it's not only, the record wasn't only recorded in proper studio situations, but also everywhere that I could record, basically in my basement. So
that's so cool. Would you mind sharing what your little mobile setup was? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Funny story. I started out with an RME 5-phase interface. And I had an ADAT to it, to Focusrite. That's not my mobile situation, but the ADAT situation that was only in our rehearsal space. But I took the RME interface on tour, but I put it in my backpack, and I put the backpack right beside the van, and I basically just drove over the interface.
Okay. That's how you get that gritty sound.
That's how you get that's how you get to smash it. And that's I did in the back was like, there was trousers, there was the interface, there was a MIDI board, the small one, the Akai.
That one.
I sold that one. I sold it afterwards on eBay, and I basically typed in what I really told what happened. Yeah, I ran over. Maybe someone ran over it with a van, and maybe it's not working. But you can maybe you can do something with that. And I sold them both. So
great.
Yeah. After that, I got the Apollo X4. Which is great because it has these two inputs on the front for recording guitar, and there was one weekend where I booked the studio to record guitars with Karan as an engineer, but he hadn't had time on that weekend, so I tried to get another engineer coming in because recording guitars is sometimes really hard because you fall out of tune, and maybe it's not the right guitar, maybe it's not the right tone. So I was kind of nervous about that, and I didn't find an engineer to do that session with. So I decided to try it on my own. I took my interface to Berlin with two guitars, two cables, and that's it. I didn't bring any amps or anything. I put that all on my bike. 4 a.m, went to the central to the station. I actually fell over, which is not that dangerous at 4 a.m. because no one's out. But yeah, I had these 2 guitars and my backpack with my recording equipment. Went to the station, went to Berlin, closed all curtains, and just tried to do it on my own. And what I did then was I just took the guitar, a cable, and the interface, and I didn't use anything else than neural DSP plugins, just because I obviously could have recorded with amps and tried out that stuff, but I wanted to try something else, and I wanted to experiment with the mobility of stuff. Yeah. Can I do this in a mobile version? Is that doable? And yeah, it kind of worked out great. So,
but you're not even the guitar player in the band, right?
Yes, I am.
You are.
I do vocals.
Yeah.
I do sing. And I'm the main vocalist, but I'm also a guitar player. And have
you always done that, or on every song? I remember you just standing in front with the mic without a guitar in your hands, or maybe I'm just wrong. But that's what I remember you do on stage, at least.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, we have Mo, who's our guitar player as well. But we kind of joke about who's the lead guitarist and who's the rhythm guitarist.
You switch between just singing and playing guitar and singing, right? Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I still look at myself as the lead guitarist.
Yeah. And Moritz disagrees there, right?
Yeah. That's an ongoing joke. But it's basically guitars are a very interesting topic on this record, because I wanted to not do too many power chord, big distorted guitars on that record. I wanted to do something else and just switch that up a little. And I think on songs like Gloves, you really you can hear that there's no deep or like low tuned rock guitars on that track. It's just different. And being a rock band, you always try to being a rock band that's like Blackout Problems, you always want to try new stuff, and that's basically one of the things that makes this record very special. I think the guitars.
Going back to Malcolm's question about the setup, real quick, and the mobility and everything. How do you get your tracks, or when you say you finished the record in a hotel room and then sent it off for mixing? Did you export everything to the way that Moritz wanted you to do it, or did you just send the Ableton sessions and he had to figure it out? Because I'm pretty sure that Moritz doesn't mix in Ableton. So how did that work in that case? And let's just start with that. I have more questions, but let's start with that. Is that how did you get your tracks out of Ableton to Moritz for the mixing?
So
kind of
the person between Moritz and me was always Karan. Karan fixed everything that had to be fixed.
Did he do the editing? Did he do the editing in Ableton or in a different DAW?
So I edited guitars and bass sometimes, and he edited vocals and drums, and I think he must have edited some guitars or bass probably somewhere along the way. But he did that. I think he usually works in Cubase, but he prepared a project for Moritz in Pro Tools.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So that was like our deal with Moritz, was always to give him prepared sessions. That he showed us that he gave us a session where he told us that that's the way I want it, because he mixes analog and there was a certain way that he wanted to have his sessions look like. So
I'm kind of surprised he doesn't have his own assistant prepping sessions or something for him. He probably does, but maybe he trusted you. Yeah. He trusted you and thought you were also capable of doing it and delivering it the right way.
Yeah, that was basically. I think that was the third record that we did together. We did the Blackout Problems record Dark, and we also did a Nikolaska record together where Moritz did the mixing. And we know each other, and he knows that we're like an always broke band. So he showed us that solution to save a little money, basically.
Yeah, cool.
But Karan did that, so I have no clue about Pro Tools. I really have to learn that. So
you gave the sessions to Karan, the Ableton sessions, and he did whatever was necessary to get it to Pro Tools.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. So the last, for example, when we let's take one song, for example. We recorded drums with Karan's laptop, and we recorded vocals with Karan's laptop, and he did the editing process. I forgot. Some of the tracks were edited by a guy called Hannes. I don't want to forget him. Yeah. Thank you. But it all went back to Karan's laptop. So he bounced all that stuff. He bounced all these tracks and gave it to me. I recorded the bass, the guitar, and I imported the stuff. I recorded some of the synth stuff myself, and I got some of the synths from Geister and imported all that into one big session, into my songwriting session. And when then I deleted like the demo drums or whatever I did there, and it kind of evolved to a finished track. And then I mixed it to a rough mix and bounced that. Gave it to Karan. He imported all these tracks into one big Pro Tools session for Moritz, and then Moritz had an idea of how I wanted the song to sound like, and he had all the tracks in the right session, so he could mix that. And he really took these rough mixes as an orientation point, and he was like, yeah, okay, that's what you want to. And I always told him, like, for example, with the song Puzzle, I didn't really like the drums that I did in the chorus, so I told him, that's the track, that's what I want, but I want the drums to sound basically just better. What can you do? And then he did that.
Okay, very interesting process. So that's how I thought it was done, but it's interesting you hear saying that, especially that it went from Karan's laptop, which probably was then Cubase or whatever, to your setup in Ableton, back to his setup to edit or fix things up, and then to Moritz to the Pro Tools session, which is very interesting. So can you tell us a little bit about, because you said you need to learn Pro Tools at some point. I'm not sure if you really need to, but I want to learn Ableton because I think it's a very useful tool for the electronic production stuff. And also, I just today I made an announcement in our coaching community as well, where we have now so many students that use all kinds of different DAWs, and some of their questions are very DAW specific, and sometimes it would be more helpful to show them how to do it in their DAW versus the way I do it in my DAW. So I made a commitment basically of installing, setting up, and learning all kinds of different DAWs in 2024. This is really something I look forward to for the coaching, and I need to bring in some people to help me with that. But I really want to do that because we got to a point where it got necessary. And we now also have a few people actually who use Ableton, which was not the case for a long time because most of our students are rock bands or rock musicians, and Ableton is not the most common there. But now we have some who use it. And out of all the DAWs, Ableton is the one that I'm having the hardest time getting used to, just because the workflow is pretty different. All the other ones, I look at them and within a few minutes, I pretty much know, what to find my way around. So can you tell me basically what specifically made you choose Ableton, what you use it for, like what is the thing that it does very well, and maybe give us like a few key things a new Ableton user should learn or need to learn, or maybe for the existing Ableton users, a few things that they might not have discovered yet, because it's interesting hearing that from a rock band producer who uses Ableton. So what's Ableton specifically good at? What made you choose it? And what are the things you would learn first?
So when I started in Logic, and I always thought that it's kind of hard to get good sounds. So when Marcus, our bass player, started to work with Ableton, the other guys started working in Ableton as well. So I was playing in a band where 3 or 4 guys were using Ableton, and I always had the feeling that they kind of were faster and the stuff that they did was better sounding than what I did.
What do you mean with it was hard to get good sounds in Logic? Like the samples that came with it? Because like when it comes to plugins or the sound of the DAW, there shouldn't be, much of a difference. But like, what do you mean with that?
I mean when I listened to projects that the other guys did, I always had the feeling that they had an easier time getting to the goal, so to say.
Specifically with electronic stuff, probably, right?
Not really.
Okay.
With I think it was just easier for them to get the DAW. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but I really had a hard time and struggling with getting like my demos to sound good. I think, and so I knew that I knew nothing about recording, and I knew that there was like a lot to learn, and so I thought if 3 or 4 guys use Ableton, I probably should use it as well. But every time I opened up Ableton, I was thinking like, what's this? It's like an alien spaceship.
Yeah, that's what it feels to me.
I have no idea where to go now. And I think that Ableton, Cubase, Pro Tools, all these DAWs look a little bit like the same DAW in certain aspects, where the tracks go, and it's
everything except Ableton, you mean? Right.
Yeah, and Ableton is so different.
Yes,
it's so
that's
different,
what I mean.
And it's like, where do I start now? And I looked at a lot of tutorials, and just YouTube is the place for it, or the Self-Recording Band is the place for it, where you can learn these things, and it's great to have those tools available. So I started learning Ableton, and it's basically what's great about Ableton is that it's once you're in, it's very usable. It's user orientated. I think it's I don't know. It's you can do certain things that you could do certain things in Ableton that you couldn't do with Logic, like for example warp stuff and change tempos more easily and change keys more easily. That was a bit easier when I started out using Ableton compared to Logic. Nowadays, everything's a bit different. I mean, that was like a few years ago, where I think that Logic has some of those functions now where it's way easier to record in Logic. And in Ableton, one of the biggest problems was that you couldn't record in take groups,
take folders,
take folders. Yeah, that wasn't possible, but that's possible now. So it's way easier to record, for example, drums, where you have every time I recorded drums back in with Ableton 10, I think it was, or 9, I don't know. And I had these 12 tracks or 16 tracks drums. I always had to duplicate 16 tracks to do another recording, which is mad. And if you have to edit that, it's hell. And that's basically the wrong DAW for that. But now they have take folders, and that's easy.
So where you can just easily comp things, right?
Yeah, you can comp things. And just the other day I had a recording session, and we did we recorded a song, and we did 10 takes of the chorus, 10 takes of the verse and stuff, and we just comped it in a few minutes, and that wasn't possible back
It's interesting how some of these seemingly basic, very important features take some companies so long to implement. It's like that always is fascinating. Some other things I get, but that you would think that's a critical feature. I remember a Reaper user telling me this year or last year or something, like they wrote me, "Hey, did you see that in Reaper you can now grab this tool and you can mark a section of a take, and then it will automatically select that and put it together with the other section." And he basically showed me comping in Reaper, which was new apparently, and I'm like, yeah, like how we were doing it in Cubase for the last 10 years. It's like, I don't know, and Malcolm and I have this ongoing conversation as well with some features between Cubase and Pro Tools sometimes. But yeah, on the other hand, Ableton, as you said, has a few other things that Cubase doesn't have, or like any DAW, like no other DAW basically has. The whole, how you can manipulate samples or waveforms, and how you can, these creative things to manipulate sound, basically, and then obviously the MIDI workflow. So I think this is really, every time I see someone use it, I don't fully get yet how to do it, but every time I see someone use it, I'm like, I want that. Like, that seems so much fun. So what do you think are like the key features now that, or are the things that you love most about it that maybe are unique to Ableton, and what are the things we should learn first when we get into Ableton?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not like the biggest pro on these things, but
it was enough to produce a major record, so
yeah. But you know, yeah, that's like, maybe that's the main thing. I'm not like a professional, but I still was able to record, to produce a record. You know, because
good point.
Maybe that's the best feature about it. But I think that having the opportunity of working with a DAW, no matter which DAW, as soon as you kind of get a workflow, and as soon as you know where to click, that's the best thing that you can do, and it doesn't really matter which one you use. If you use Ableton, you have, for me, it kind of gave me a new perspective on songs, and it kind of, I don't know, it was easier for me to blend the rock and the electronic side of stuff together, not because that wouldn't be possible in other DAWs. For example, Enter Shikari, I think that is also produced by their singer Rao, and I think that he's a Logic user. And I mean, if there's one band that implements like electronic and rock like perfectly, that's Enter Shikari basically. But I don't know, I had all the tools at my hand. I could record analog stuff, I could record drums in our rehearsal space, which is like basically the most rock thing you can do, and then mix them together with MIDI synth sounds or with samples from Splice, for example, and put that together. I don't know if you've heard of Splice. It's like this.
Using it a lot.
And it's one click and it's in my DAW, and I can use it on a track, and that's That's basically it's easy.
Not many people know this, but because it was a top secret project in the beginning, but I once had to write and produce and mix and master and all of that 60-something songs for a Swiss radio station who would use them in their night sort of program stuff. Like they had to be electronic, chill out, dance, whatever songs, which is not in my wheelhouse at all. But for some reason, they wanted me to do that, and I still don't know why. And Splice saved my ass on that project. So I got it done, and the stuff was played on the radio. It was a nice gig and a good budget and all of that. But without Splice, I would have been lost, So
yeah,
I remember you getting that gig.
Nice, man. There's actually one Splice loop on our record as well. That I kept in, but I was trying to. Splice was a good song starter thing, and it some of these loops sound so good, and it's kind of interesting that especially a lot of guitar loops found their way into popular music now, and I was just really inspired by that, and I was inspired by how do I get my guitar to sound the way a guitar should sound in 2023, so sometimes I chopped it up and did some guitar loops that are just under the track, and some of the guitars really sound like synth things, and sometimes it's just a DI guitar, and that's it, and sometimes there's not even an amp plugin or anything on that, but it's just the way that the guitar as an instrument is something that I can more or less play, and so it's my go-to instrument. So it's easier for me to write something on guitar than on I don't know, on another instrument. And if now Ableton helped me to make the guitar sounds more interesting, I think.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Very cool.
So one question I have to ask before we wrap it up, because we've been going for a while now, but one thing I need to ask you, Mario, did you use anything on that record specifically that you've learned from this podcast? Because I know that you've been a long-time listener, and when the first time we met in person, it was like years ago, and you already, I think you downloaded our first free PDF guide that we put out there back then and stuff like that, and we talked about it. And I know that you, at least, I don't know how regularly, but I know that you listen to the show, to the podcast. So is there anything you've learned from this show specifically, or from some of our material, that you've actually used on that record? Or did it help at all? I'm just interested.
Yeah, probably. First of all, it helped me. Of course, it helped me just to hear your sweet voices so every now and then, talking about audio stuff. And
awesome.
First of all, it's great to have a podcast like that, and to learn new things and to hear stories of other producers or recording engineers or anything, and to hear what are their problems, how did they solve them, and what's their story. And that's always interesting for me.
Cool.
And tips and tricks, I think, that's very interesting, because a thing that I really struggled with sometimes was signal flow. I now have this patch bay here, and I don't know if it's a thing that I've learned on the podcast, but I've learned that on certain especially on podcasts or on YouTube tutorials, that how do I really wire my whole studio stuff. That was like a big thing for me, a big takeaway from the internet, and maybe also
we have some episodes on that too.
That was interesting, because now I have only 12 channels here. I have the Apollo X4 and an aided Focusrite, where I have 8 channels, and then but I have 2 patch bays from our old rehearsal space. So I have a few free channels now, and I was thinking about how can I get some loops or some recorded tracks to sound more interesting, and I rewire the whole thing and go through my guitar pedals, and that's basically a thing that I struggled with. So the internet helped me out. So I think these podcasts and tutorials, even though you're not always taking 100% of that away and put it into your own work, you always hear something that strikes a bell, and that gets you to think about your stuff differently. So that's I think you really I really admire that you do this every week. And especially, I don't know if you listeners know that, but Malcolm gets up at 6 or 5, I think, because it's 6:30.
I got the 5, yeah.
It's 6:30 at his place. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's true.
Coffee helps.
That's true. You're totally right. Yeah. Yeah, and
you don't look tired at all.
No, it's always funny when...
Not today. I got up early enough today.
It's always funny when we tell people that, and you see the question marks in their faces. Like Cooley was the same thing. Christian Cooley, who was just on the podcast, when I told him what time it was at your place, Malcolm, he was like, why do you record podcasts that early? Like, there must be a good reason for that, right?
It's funny. Sometimes I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. I'm like, come on, brain, get going. But
I sometimes feel the other way around, honestly, Malcolm. Like, for me, it's late afternoon, and I get up early as well, and I feel like in the morning I would have more energy probably than I have this time of the day.
Right.
So maybe somewhere in the middle would be nice for both of us, but that is not possible. So
yeah, totally.
We have to live with whatever we have.
Totally.
Yeah. Very, very cool, Mario. Thank you for all of that. So Malcolm, do you have anything that you want to ask Mario that we forgot from so far?
I mean, we really did cover pretty much everything. I was really interested in like the collaboration of the DAWs between you and the rest of your team, and the team you managed to put together, and how you handled finding them as the producer of the project. But you really did cover all of that really, really well. I also really did enjoy hearing about how you handle the electronic elements on stage, be that not using your DAW like you're doing, using pads. That's still interesting, I think, for our audience as well. One of my like pet peeves is the like, oh, we shouldn't do this on the album because we can't do it live. And it's like, you just haven't figured out how to do it live. You can totally do it live. You just got to figure it out. So I like that. You've just made it work no matter what. That's awesome.
Thank you. And it's something that shouldn't hold you back. If you want to do something on the record that you cannot reproduce live, then if you really want to do it on the record, then just do it and play the song differently live.
100%. Totally. It's going to be different either way.
Where's the problem? I think we all know bands where we have like these certain favorite live records where the live recording just sounds different from what we hear on the normal record, and we love it. And that's the thing. We're all fans and we're all musicians, and that's we shouldn't hold ourselves back too much and don't think too much about stuff. I mean, yeah, it's just playing. It's playing, and it should be fun.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only other thing actually I did want to mention is that I feel like in these days putting out a full album every couple of years is actually pretty prolific. Bands tend to be pretty slow. So I wanted to tip my hat to you and just like, you're crushing it. It's a lot of material. That's awesome.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Cool. So one final technical question, maybe just real quick. Mario, which kind of synths or like sound generators, if you will, are you using for the electronic stuff? So you mentioned Splice for the samples, the loops and stuff like that. But like when you create something from scratch, any favorite tools there that you use? Is it stock Ableton stuff? Is it outside third-party stuff? What do you use?
Yeah, sometimes it's a Novation bass station. That's a synth that's just right beside me. That's Marcus' synth. I don't have one at the moment, and I'm thinking about getting a Minilogue. Or maybe I've tried out a few different things, but I really couldn't decide on like a favorite electronic piece of gear that I really want to use, because because I come from this band background and from this guitar playing and background. I really like to touch knobs and do things with my hands, and sometimes too many plugins can like overwhelm me. I really need a few go-to plugins that I really have to like get to know and check out, and then that's why I also have these guitar pedals beside me that I can run my sounds through, because I know these pedals and I can like turn the knobs with my hands, and I know if I turn this knob then this happens, and that's pretty good for me. But my go-to plugins are a lot of Soundtoys plugins actually. I think that 90% of the reverbs are Soundtoys little plates. The echoes are the Echo Boy, and I did most of the side chaining. I did not the usual way with side chaining, but I did it with a tremolator. And yeah, I think that's basically these are my go-to sounds. I often start just playing a guitar rhythm or a melody or something like that, and then get it to sound weird, and that's and then it sounds like an electronic element, but it's not. It's a guitar. That's
right. No,
the first thing that
awesome.
I was asked a few years back was, have you changed? Have you just sold your guitar and just used synths? But and the thing was, hey, on this record there are basically not that many synths. These are just guitars, but they sound like synth.
Cool.
Yeah, and that a very good plugin for that was also by Neural DSP, the Archetype Rabea. It has this implemented synth.
Thing.
That's and you can also generate arpeggios with that, and
cool.
Yeah, get your guitar to sound completely different.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's very, very good stuff. Sound Toys, well loved by Benny and I. We're huge Sound Toys fans. Have you tried their Super Plate yet, or are you still just rocking Little Plate?
Yeah, I've changed to Super Plate now.
Yes, it's the best.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I there's another podcast that I love. It's called Tape Notes. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, we were talking about it last week, real quick, Mario.
Yeah. It always gets a producer and a musician together, and they talk about their record that they did, and they are often asked about what are your favorite plugins, and a lot of them say Sound Toys. It's something like that, or you get ideas and you try out different things, but you I think having like 10 or 20 favorite plugins that you get to know is sometimes better than having like too many.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
One key takeaway from this whole conversation, Mario, is really that it seems to be more about like the vision and the vibe you're trying to get, and whatever is necessary to make that come out of the speakers, you'll do basically. So it doesn't really matter if it's a synth or a guitar that sounds like a synth, or just a guitar, or which DAW, whatever. It's like you just make it happen, and you don't really care about like, you know, genre conventions or things that you should do or should not do. And I think this is really interesting, and it totally makes sense that you like Sound Toys plugins, because they are really some of the most creative plugins to me. They are kind of unique. They are not the 15th, you know, version of the same compressor that everyone models, but they are like their own thing. And especially for a and I don't mean that in a negative way, Mario, but especially for a non, you know, technical sort of minded engineer type, like, but a creative producer artist type like you are, I think these tools are the best, because you can just play around with them until they sound great. You can make something unique, and maybe I get it all wrong, but I get the impression from talking to you that it's more about the creativity, about the feeling and the vibe, and less about the exact way to do it technically, which I love. It's a very creative approach, and makes total sense for someone who's an artist first and then got into producing. Basically, this is not surprising.
It's basically the same way that we run our band. We don't have a master plan. I don't have a master plan with producing. I just do what comes out of me, and I sometimes have a goal and I try to achieve it, and that's basically the thing. And that's the same approach that I did when I mixed this Ume Block record. The band wanted me to mix it, and I told them that I can try, but I have no idea if I can do it. And they have really specific ideas on how they want to sound, and I tried to match that. And what came out might not be the best engineered or the best mixed record in the world. It obviously is not, but it's their record, and it's about their vision, and it's the same with Riot, with our next record. It's our vision, and that's it doesn't have to be like perfect. It just have to be perfect for you. And I did as much and as long as it took to get to a point where I was like content with, hey, that's what I want us to sound like, and I'm happy with it, so let's give it away. And as soon as the record's out and I'm gonna listen to it, I'm probably gonna find some things that I'm gonna be like, on the next record, I want to do that better. I want to do this better, and that's a good starting point for the next record.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can people check out that next record, and like what's already out? When is it gonna be out, the full thing? Where can people find and check out Blackout Problems and learn more about you? Like, where should we send them?
On February 23rd, our next record, Riot, will be out. You can pre-order that one right now, and we have 2 singles out now. The next one comes out on Friday, so probably before this episode airs.
No, this one's actually going to be out 2 days from now. This is a very last minute sort of recording, which is not always the case, but in this case it is.
Okay, so this Friday our next single, Funeral, drops, and you can check us out on tour. We'll be all over Europe, mainland, with Enter Shikari and Fever 333 in February, and we're gonna play a few release shows and then do a few festivals. We'll be at Rock am Ring and Rock im Park this year.
Very cool.
And probably a few smaller ones as well, and then do a big tour, which is not announced at the moment, but it's gonna be out, I think, in February or something like that. And yeah, we try to do our first proper European tour now with all the countries that we missed in the pandemic.
Awesome.
Oh,
really, really cool.
Awesome. Do you ever come over to North America?
No, we haven't, and we really need to do that. Yeah, but
yeah, please do.
Yeah, it's not that easy. I mean, especially for a German band, it's really hard to get out of Germany and play somewhere else than Austria or Switzerland. And we managed to do that in the UK now, or we played in France and in Czech Republic and Holland and Belgium. But playing in the US or playing in Canada or something like that would be like, yeah. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it's a big commitment of time and planning and money.
Yeah,
sure.
Of course. Yeah, there's a lot of money involved, and people probably don't know that, but it's really fucking hard to do that. And yeah, it's a goal for us. Maybe it's gonna come true, and maybe not. We don't know. We just go with the flow.
Awesome.
I'm sure it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, for sure. So yeah, we're excited for that record. All of the info, the links to that, the pre-order, all of that will be in the description or the show notes of this episode. And if you have any follow-up questions for Mario, please just feel free, reach out to us. We'll forward it. I can't guarantee that Mario's going to take the time to answer, but like I'm just offering
I'm
this.
I'm going to take my time.
Awesome, perfect. So thank you. So do that. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Mario. And also shout out to Wayne, who's editing our podcast. We don't do that often enough, actually. Thank you, Wayne, for editing this. And very sorry that like the moment we have an episode that needs to be done like in a day, basically, we give you this long ass episode today. we could have done like a 40-minute one, but instead we chose to go for an hour and 40 minutes. Sorry, Wayne. Thank you for getting this done in time. And I got one more thing before we leave you guys, and that is because it's episode 200 and because it's the end of the year and all of that, I have we have a special gift for you. I can't tell you yet what it exactly is because I will only do that when I have it in my hands, basically. But I have prepared something as a gift for our listeners and subscribers. So if you're not on our email list yet, please do by downloading one of our free things. For example, Standout Mixes, our latest mixing guide. If you go to the selfrecordingband.com/standout mixes, you can get that. If you are on our email list, you'll get an email very soon with a gift for you that is celebrating the 200th episode and also just the end of the year and the holidays, whatever. But you're getting a gift, which is great. And thank you again, Mario, for taking the time and talking to us about all of this. This is really exciting. And also thanks for being a listener of this podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
All right. See you next week. Bye-bye.